The Origin of Ridelymas by C. Ben Stevenson.
Ridley, the patron monster of knowledge, barbecue, sacrifice, and husbands, came to us many years ago and offered himself to us. That is why we celebrate him. You have heard many stories, but if it doesn't come directly from Tartar Park, it's probably not true. Tartar Park, that neighborhood that rests under the Tacoma and Lamont communities in Washington, D.C., has been celebrating him for almost 20 years. Of course you've never heard of Tartar Park. Why would you? Tartar Park in Nether Washington, D.C., in the Federated States of the Land of Lost Headaches, is a place where myth meets reality and witches still cast spells instead of using smartphones, and where ghosts make love to werewolves and wishes are always granted, for better or for worse. You've likely avoided it for good reasons and not known. There are only two ways in: Jumping Jack Springs and Rock Creek Park, and the old train tracks under the metro in Tacoma at 4th and Butternut. We celebrate because of his generosity to our family and what he means to us all. It began when I found Ridley under David's bed, large horns, sharp yellow razor teeth, and green spiderweb eyes, piquant breath, and fur scented like rotten mayonnaise. I remember I called animal control. They sent Carl. Yes, that Carl. Carl had a clock for a head, frying pans for eyes, and a snout of leaves. He wore a wife beater, and on one arm was a tattoo that said Richard, and on the other side it said Clayderman. He had a piano necklace. I remember that Carl had good taste. I loved the movie Irreconcilable Differences, probably my favorite Drew Barrymore film, and Clayderman's soundtrack was out of this world. Totally my jam.
Jesus, said Carl. This is the 7th one today, just in zip code 2066.
I apologize, said the monster. It wasn't supposed to turn out this way. The monster, named Ridley, the Goatman of Maryland, said the International Union of Cryptids and Fabulous Creatures had been on strike for 200 years, but scabs had won out, and the union had to concede on a number of contractual obligations. This included their health care. Without adequate access to monsters, doctors, a plague broke out, causing all of the monsters to get sick. We were on strike for so long that most humans didn't even know we existed, said Ridley. And usually they would only remain invisible, except to kids, where they could only be seen in closets and under beds. The monsters' immune systems were so compromised they couldn't help but remain visible to adults, and now they could be seen anywhere. I asked, "Why are you working if you are sick?" "Bills still have to be paid. I've been out of work for 200 years, drawing monies from strike pay. I have a little minotaur and a fawn that I need to put through college. Thankfully, my wife makes enough as a mayor that my family can thrive after I'm gone." Your wife is a horse? He laughed and then gave a very serious cough. Don't let her hear you say that. No, she's a mare as in nightmare. She's a bringer of bad dreams. She usually watches over this block. If you leave me in the backyard, she'll come take care of me.
I don't think so,
said Carl, crossing his arms. David, my son, ran in from playing outside. David's eyes got big, and he looked down and started to cry. Ridley said, "Let me take care of this." He put up his hand and grasped David's hand in his. David looked down.
I was just starting to not be afraid of you.
Well, perhaps it's time enough. There will be more monsters in the future, said the dying monster. And if you can deal with me, you can deal with anything. More monsters? I asked. Yes. Bullies, bad girlfriends or boyfriends, drug pushers. I covered my mouth. I have an idea, said Ridley. He displayed a bag from nowhere. Inside, he looked and found a necklace and handed it to David. I was going to give this to my boy, but I'll let you have it instead. Let it be my gift to you both. Now, I will always be with you. What is it? Asked David. It's a talisman, Ridley responded. Wear this, and if you kill something, you get its life force. Eat them, and you get their memories. Okay, said David. Ridley looked in the bag and pulled out another and handed it to me. Now you both have one. He looked at Carl. I only have two, but you can get them at any grocery for 25 cents in a gumball machine. Carl shrugged his shoulders. You ever had barbacoa, David? Asked Ridley. No. It's good stuff, he said. Eat me, and you'll be more than prepared to tackle the world. Let my death be a beacon to the world and to your life. Will you go to Monster Heaven? David asked Ridley. Yes. And what is Monster Heaven like? It's a lot like human heaven. Angel monsters flying around with harps, monsters singing. So, like in All Dogs Go to Heaven? Yes. Then David turned to me and asked, Is Dad in heaven? I said no. Is he alive? I said no. I asked David, You've never brought him up before. Why now? They gave David's father, Harper Jones, the chair last year for stepping in a puddle and not knowing how many cracks were in it. He stepped on so many that millions of mothers' backs were affected. It made nationwide news. No one died, but some things are worse than death, like being annoyed because randos are breaking your back. There was a class action lawsuit and Harper lost. But Harper was a professional serial killer by trade, and there wasn't any money in that, so he was broke. The only thing they could come up with was to give him the chair and sell tickets to the event. They divvied up the proceeds among the moms, mothers, meemaws, and Grammys. The investigation into the splooshing turned reckless chiropractic was how I found out he was David's father. David wanted to do one of those ethnicity DNA tests. He came back 75% pirate, 10% train conductor, and 15% pork rind. He was matched to one Harper Jones as a father and 52 half-siblings. Harper Jones, who was previously known as sperm donor 102537, gave the world a deck of cards of serial killers' children. Too bad he stepped in a puddle, and now he's in heaven. Your dad is a busy man, said Ridley. In fact, I'm sure he gets to spend time in both human heaven and monster heaven. Carl took Ridley into the kitchen, and we all prepared him for dinner. We covered parts of him in maple sugar, garlic, and mustard, other parts of him in sumac, garlic, fennel, and thyme. We put him in the oven for 4 hours and let his head hang out. While he scorched, he told us about growing up as a monster, taught us how to play the pan flute, and how to speak Goatese. When he was ready, Ridley was on a platter almost completely barbecued except for his eyes. We set a table for the three of us. We had 69 of his favorite dipping sauces. "Sit yourselves down at the dinner table," Ridley said. "It's time to feast." We sat at the table, and Carl sliced off bits of Ridley. "Dang!" said David. "You're delish!" "Oh yeah, that's my stiffle. I'm so sure it suits the palate. But wait until you try my ribs. Carl slow roasted the mother effers, and he queued up a hellacious sauce for it too." Carl came in with a rack of ribs and howled, "Falling off the bone!" Carl set the ribs down. "Slice me off a piece of my cheek," said Ridley, and I did so. "Now dip some of that tzatziki sauce, and I bet I taste perf." I did, and put it into his mouth. His yellow teeth chewed the morsel in the sideways form goats are known for. His eyes got wide, and his spirit elated. "Mew, mew, 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 gooder than I thought. Not bad for an aging cryptid, eh?" Now you remember, Davy, that the more you eat, the more you gain. I think I just forgot how to tie my shoes. How do I tie my shoes? With chopsticks. Oh yeah, that's true. He guffawed for a minute and a half, and then settled down. "Now let me eat some of my ribs," said Ridley. "And oh, I can taste the peas I ate this morning." With each bite, we all learned more and more about our precious Goatman. "I know how to keep a budget," said one of us. "I know how to pleasure a nightmare in 50 different ways," said another, followed with "ooh la la" from someone else. "Who knew that peeing on your beard is a great way to get people to leave you alone?" "I can do basic accounting." "I know how to carve mushrooms out of chicken bones." We ate and ate and ate and ate and ate and ate, all except the head and the heart. "Get me a toothpick," said Ridley. "I have a piece stuck in my molar. Do you see it?" "Yes." "Good. Pick it out." Davy did, and Ridley re-chewed that tidbit. When he was finished, he said, "That's enough victuals," and died. Carl gathered up the carcass to take out to his van. "Does this happen often?" I asked. "You mean the whole eating thing?" I nodded. "Never." And that was the last I ever saw of Carl. Davy devoured the heart, taking Ridley's last bit. I took the head. I had it taxidermied. He had his sliced cheek sewn up and his whole head tethered. We had it mounted and hung over the television in the living room. Sometimes his wife and kids would stop by to take a look at it and remember their wonderful husband and father. Sometimes they have questions, and since Davy and I ate him, we know everything Ridley knows, and we have his answers. In fact, people come from all around the flat earth to ask us questions about Ridley. But once a year, on the day he died, we celebrate Ridelymas, a time of coming together and love. We break out talismans and eat goats in his honor. We sing songs of yore and hang strung-up pea garland on the wall. We hold protests down at City Hall and demand healthcare for all monsters. We pretend to call animal control, and a suited-up man named Carl brings us all necklaces. First, it was just our family. Then, just our block. And then, just our ANC. Then everyone in the 20666 started celebrating. We've held these events for 20, 30 years now. Each time Tartar Park celebrates harder and harder. So much so they can hear our cheers in the above-ground neighborhoods of Lamont and Tacoma. They say that newcomers always see him, and he passes out bits of his charred flesh so that they can also get to know him. Others say they hear him under their bed singing sweetly to sons and single mothers, supposedly the inspiration for the hit Ridleymas carol on the radio, Good Cheer for All Who Cheer Good for All. Davy comes by with his kids, and I tell this story every year to my grandkids, great-grandkids, and sometimes toward the end of the night, lying in bed, after everyone is asleep. I swear I can smell that rotten mayonnaise and spicy breath, and I get goosebumps all over, as if his ghost is embracing and watching over me forever.